show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point.
Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dewbs & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GBNews, Britain's news channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question, that's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and wanted to have an open discussion.
My name's Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Miriam Kate and you're watching GB News. Coming up in the next hour on Dewbs & Co. Does China hold the key to stopping the boats? Well, on the second day of his official visit to the Asian superpower, Sir Keir Starmer has signed a landmark intelligence sharing deal with Beijing in an attempt to stop Chinese engines and dinghies being used to transport migrants across the English Channel. But will it work? And can Britain trust Xi Jinping? And ministers have said that schools should only suspend pupils in the most serious cases of poor behaviour and violence. Between 2023 and 2024, school suspensions increased by 21%. But the Education Secretary says that exclusion isn't the punishment it used to be, because children retreat to social media, gaming and the online world instead of serving their punishment. And millions of WASPI women will not receive any compensation. The government has again decided in its latest ruling on the case. 2 years ago, the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman ruled that women born between 1950 and 1960 who had been affected by pension changes should be compensated. But the Work and Pensions Secretary, Pat McFadden, said that a payout would cost up to £10 billion and would simply not be right or fair. And sponsors of the terminally ill adults bill have threatened to force the legislation through Parliament, despite the fact that legalising assisted suicide was not in the Labour Party manifesto. The bill's opponents say they're disappointed that supporters are resorting to bullying tactics in an effort to pass the legislation. And joining me for some lively debate, I've got my panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, and the Labour MP, Jeevan Sander. But first, your latest news headlines.
Miriam, thank you, and a very good evening to you. Just after 6 o'clock, the top story tonight. Sir Keir Starmer says Britain is entering a new phase in its relationship with China as he makes the first visit by a UK Prime Minister in 8 years. During talks in Beijing with Xi Jinping, the two sides agreed a package aimed at boosting trade and travel. China has agreed to allow British citizens to travel visa-free for up to 30 days. And there's a cut in import taxes on UK whisky from 10 to 5%. Downing Street says both measures are designed to help British businesses expand in one of the world's biggest markets, while insisting that national security and human rights concerns will still be raised. Well, the Prime Minister says engagement, not isolation, is now essential when dealing with Beijing. Here's what Sir Keir Starmer had to say when he spoke earlier.
It's vitally important that we're here today, because as two proud nations, G20 economies and permanent members of the UN Security Council, it is in our common interest to find positive ways to work together.
But his visit has triggered a fierce political backlash here at home. Conservative MP Chris Philps says the Prime Minister is clutching at straws and accused him of bending to Beijing's agenda and putting Britain's security at risk.
People are losing their jobs, businesses on the high street are going bankrupt, and he is now in desperation going to Beijing, kowtowing to the Chinese, hoping for some economic crumbs of comfort to fix the mess he's created.
In other news tonight, nearly 100 children were harmed by a surgeon at Great Ormond Street Hospital, according to a damning internal review. That investigation found widespread unacceptable practice by limb reconstruction specialist Yasser Jabbar, who worked at the hospital between 2017 and 2022. Out of 789 children under his care, 94 were found to have come to harm, most of them following surgery for complex limb lengthening procedures. One family says their 12-year-old son still suffers nightmares and will live with the consequences for the rest of his life. Jabbar is understood to be living overseas and no longer holds a licence to practice in the UK. The Metropolitan Police says it is now reviewing the findings of that report to decide whether a criminal investigation could be needed. Turning to news in the Middle East, and Britain has said its allies are working to ensure that Iran does not develop nuclear weapons as the US has stepped up its military presence in the region. Washington has now sent additional warships to the region, bringing the number of US destroyers there to 6, alongside the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group. The build-up comes as tensions with Iran are intensifying, and Donald Trump has issued one of his starkest warnings yet. Iran, though, has responded defiantly, saying its forces have their finger on the trigger and insisting its nuclear program is peaceful. Meanwhile, in the United States, 2 federal immigration agents involved in the fatal shooting of Alex Pretty in Minneapolis have been placed on administrative leave. A standard step, officials say, after such an incident. Pretty, a 37-year-old intensive care nurse, was shot and killed during a fatal immigration operation on Saturday, sparking widespread protests and bipartisan criticism of enforcement tactics. The Trump administration, though, has dispatched Border Chief Tom Homan to Minneapolis, saying ICE is working to make its operations safer by the book. Minnesota officials, meanwhile, and campaigners are continuing to call for accountability as tensions simmer over federal immigration enforcement across the city. Back here at home, women hit by changes to the state pension age have reacted with anger and disbelief after ministers again rejected calls for compensation. The government reviewed the case after new documents emerged, but concluded no payouts will be made. Campaigners from Women Against State Pension Inequality say 3.6 million women born in the 1950s were not properly informed about the rise in pension age, which left many facing unexpected financial hardship. They've accused ministers today of showing utter contempt for those affected, but the government says a compensation scheme would not have been practical. And driverless cars are set to hit London's streets later this year. Waymo, Google's self-driving car group, says it plans to launch a pilot service in April using robo-taxis, but with a safety driver still behind the wheel. The company says its vehicles could be fully driverless by the end of 2026, provided regulators give the green light. The government is expected to change the law in the second half of this year, paving the way for driverless taxis to operate in the capital. The Transport Secretary says she's delighted by the announcement, calling it a major step forward for transport innovation in the UK. Those are the 6 o'clock headlines. I'll be back with you in an hour's time. Now, though, it's over to Miriam.
Thank you, Sam, and welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Miriam Cates. And joining me until 7 o'clock, I've got my panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, and Labour MP, Jeevan Sander. And please, at home, remember to get your views and comments in, gbnews.com/yoursay. We'll be reading out your opinions throughout the programme. Well, let's start with our first story tonight. And Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has signed a new border security deal with China aimed at disrupting the supply of small boats. Well, the government says that more than 60% of small boat engines used by people smugglers crossing the English Channel are manufactured in China. The deal will allow the UK law enforcement agencies to work with Chinese authorities to prevent this equipment from reaching criminal networks in Europe. More than 41,000 people arrived here on small boats last year, a figure described by the Home Office as shameful. But will this deal make a dent in the number of small boat crossings in the Channel? And is President Xi Jinping someone we should be doing business with? Jeevan, let's start with you. I think we can all understand how important it is to the Prime Minister to stop the boats. Failing to do so ruined the last government. It's got a potential to ruin this government too. Do you think this deal, though, is anything more than a tokenistic effort to show that the Prime Minister is getting something from his trip to China?
Well, every little helps, and this will help. Right? Now, it's not the silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. As you said, Miriam, the last government struggled with this as well. If there was a policy that we could implement tomorrow to stop the boats from coming in, we would. This will help to stop the supply of engines. It will help to stop, if you like, or reduce the supply of those boats. But there's a huge amount else that we have to do. So, yes, we've increased the amount of enforcement. We've got the backlog down by 18%. But there is a lot further to go. Because also, I'd say this, I'm really proud to be British. I'm really proud of this country, as I'm sure you are, everyone watching is. And part of that also is about who does and does not come. Now, at the moment, we have a huge number of people crossing the Channel who then make an application. We want to make that more ordered. So that's also part of the one-in, one-out deal. So, yes, this will help, but it's certainly not a silver bullet.
But the Home Secretary did admit yesterday that more people have come in on the one-in, one-out deal than gone out. I think it's 60 to 45 or something like that. But you said if only there was a policy that overnight could solve this problem. Well, there is a policy that could do that, and that's something along the lines of the Rwanda deal, where anybody who arrives on our shores illegally is immediately detained, immediately deported, and their asylum claims processed from a third country. That's what Australia did. It did solve the problem overnight.
But the problem with the Rwanda deal, as you know, was that only 400 people were going to go.
Initially,
50,
that was the initial processing phase.
I think also, if your government at the time, if Rishi had really believed it, why call the election in July? Wait until December. Let's show the fruits of the deal and get it done. But actually, less than 1% of people would go. So, yes, in theory, if you could have everybody going to a different nation, fine, but that was never on the table.
Well, it should have been. I agree with you, the bill was too weak, and that's why 11 of us actually rebelled against that bill for that reason. But nevertheless, in principle, surely that's the answer, rather than all these kind of ad hoc deals.
I do find it bizarre that you are actually batting on this particular area of this completely useless trip by our not very good...
I don't have an opinion, Kelvin. I'm just saying this could be the Prime Minister's strategy.
Yeah, right. So I can't imagine what it must be like to spend an hour and 20 minutes on your own with Starmer. That must have been an absolute nightmare for some middle-ranking European nation failing economically in a way that China is doing gangbusters.
You're doing Britain down.
Yeah, I am actually. I'm saying under this government, it's shocking. But taking your point, I do agree that if this happens, that there are less Chinese, then there are less Chinese engines, there will be somebody else's engines. There is so much money being made. We have failed to deal with this. The Tories were lamentable. And I agree with your point that Rishi going to the country in July was the most bizarre political decision I can remember from a Conservative Prime Minister in my time. However, the idea that this is a big moment, the only time that Starmer is at all happy is when he's out of the country pontificating about things he knows he can't deliver. So it may be a good thing that there are less Chinese engines. They'll be replaced by engines from, I don't know, Czechoslovakia or somewhere else, or even so much money's being made. I'm surprised that there isn't a factory actually making them. But we have to look at what else. What was the point of going there? We had an entire groupage, right? The good and the great of our country, even down to the Royal Shakespeare Company were over there, God knows why, all carrying burner phones because they knew that they were going to be their very conversations were going to be taken and then used against them. And the same thing is happening in our country, where even number 10 were having to admit that something was going on with the Chinese. Why on earth do we trust them? Why don't we just try and get our own economy in some kind of shape? Why don't we scrap things like the Employment Act and all these increases in NI, allow people to make money, allow our economy to boom, and then go to China and then say, we'll do a deal on reasonable terms. We can't do a deal now. We have a Prime Minister who's prepared to prostrate himself in front of a dictatorship, a communist dictatorship. And he said he prefers doing deals with Labour. You think you know why.
I think he enjoys shaking hands with foreign leaders in the sense that's absolutely what a prime minister is expected to do, not just with those in Xi Jinping, but President Trump and across the world. China is one of our major trading partners. Now, this is a realistic relationship. You are right. We definitely have competition with China in a lot of different areas and, frankly, a lot of differences of opinion, both when it comes to freedom, when it comes to human rights, and, of course, when it comes to democracy. But any single prime minister at this point in time has to deal with the world as it is, not as the world as he wishes it would be. I wish that China was a democracy. I wish that was a country we dealt with every single day. But that's not where we are at the moment. So how do we deal in this world that's far more difficult? And as we go forward with more coordinated threats, not only around, for example, around conflict, but also around the climate, we do have to talk and cooperate and work with the nations where we can, and where we can't, we're clear where we have differences of opinion.
But isn't it misleading to say that China is a trading partner? I mean, that's a bit like me saying that Tesco is my trading partner because I spend £200 there every week, but they don't buy anything off me. That's exactly the same. We are completely dependent on China. We buy £75 billion of their goods every year. They buy less and less of our goods. We are just an economic dependency.
But we have cheaper goods out there that benefit consumers in this country as well.
Well, we've destroyed our manufacturing base, which has weakened the pound and grown inflation.
Where was your phone made?
Oh, I expect it was made in China, but this is my point.
One of the reasons why is also because labour costs are lower in China. Now, you're right, manufacturing has left this country, in part because technology improved, but in part because of trade. Now, if we want high wages in this country as well as cheaper priced goods, that also means that, yes, you're right, manufacturing does leave, mass production manufacturing does leave.
But this is a disaster.
If you put up minimum pay every 5 seconds and you put up national insurance taxes every 5 seconds, then actually, and electricity prices every 5 seconds, then you are going to get what we've got over here. We can't make these things. And the next one I can see being an absolute disaster for us is Chinese cars. I mean, they are pricing them. I don't know whether you follow the pricings of ordinary saloon electric Chinese cars.
They're 30%
honestly,
cheaper.
They're fantastic. They're incredible value. And honestly, I am fearful about what will happen, actually, mainly to European cars, it must be said, but I am very fearful about what will happen to even minis being made in our country.
Isn't it an absolute disaster, which I absolutely don't blame Labour government for? This is 30 years of failed economic policy. Isn't it an absolute disaster that we've had a negative balance of trade since the year 2000? We hardly make anything ourselves. We're beholden not only to China, but to the Americans and lots of other countries. If these countries decide to raise prices, we are stuffed.
Well, yeah, the reason is, by and large, we're lazy.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've ever worked alongside, the only ones I've worked alongside, American business people, right? I've had a business colleague just recently. Honestly,
it's not just laziness, though.
He was a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week guy, and he must have been in his 60s.
But isn't
and
it
the other
also...
one I know is Murdoch, and he's in his 90s, and he's still hitting the phones. So these people are different. We have got to work harder.
It's not just that, though. It is about...
A lot of it is. Our bosses are not good enough.
Potentially, but it's also the regulatory environment. You know, Thatcher decided that we should sell everything to the highest bidder, including if they are foreign investors, and Blair's government pursued that. And now, unlike the French and the Germans, who have rules to stop foreign ownership, we are just sold to the highest bidder.
Can I say, just for start, I have a huge amount of faith and pride in the British worker. Like, the people I've worked with, they've worked incredibly hard. Look, my parents came to this country as teenagers. They managed to work their way up, if you like, and gave me a great life in this country because they got to work so hard in a country and an economy that was doing well. And actually, I was growing up in a country that was doing incredibly well and a nation that was growing. In terms of your question about where we are foreign ownership, yes, absolutely, of course. You've talked a huge amount of the mistakes that have happened in the past. But you've also spoken, I think, quite rightly about the fact that we need more good jobs in this country and across this country. There's a technological problem that mass production manufacturing isn't coming back. How do you invest in those places that have not done traditionally as well? One thing I'm really proud of is building houses, insulating homes. Sorry?
Has Labour given up on British manufacturing?
We absolutely love British manufacturing, right? Advanced manufacturing is huge in this country. But I'm saying the old era, when we had factories with tens of thousands or thousands of people, there are far fewer of those now because technology has changed. Right, I'm in Loughborough. There's the great brush factory near us. Right, that used to employ, I think, 3,000 to 4,000 people. Now you're looking at much more capital-intensive production. There are jobs elsewhere in the local economy. I'm really proud of those jobs, those companies. But going forward, as the world has changed, we need to think about what those other jobs are going to be. So part of, for example, the Warm Homes Plan, insulating a lot of homes, building a lot of homes, there's a good non-graduate jobs across this country.
Kelvin, final word for me on this topic. Do you think that deals with China are the key to reviving our economy?
No,
Something
I don't.
else.
No.
What should we do then?
No,
What should Labour do?
No, I don't. I mean, I like the idea they reduced the tariff for whiskey going into it, but they're not huge.
Are you a
whiskey.
big fan of Chinese whiskey?
No, I was talking about Scottish whisky going in. They reduced the tariff there to 5%. So I'm pleased with that. And as for a gab fest and a bit of a waffle around, and he's out of the country, therefore he doesn't have to face the fact that he's not going to be Prime Minister in about 20 minutes' time. Yeah, jolly good, right? But it is odd, isn't it, how he loves going out of the country. Now, I enjoy him being out of the country, actually, because actually I don't have to listen to his nonsense every night. But now I can't even escape it when it's from China. Honestly, I wish we would focus more on trying to make our country wealthy and not worry too much about trying to do a trade with China in which they will kill us. After all, what do? We invent something, 2 seconds later, they deconstruct it, and suddenly they're selling it back to us a third of the price, right? Why don't we attack them for that? Why don't we start doing the reverse to them? Why don't we start taking their stuff and deconstructing it and then manufacturing it? Honestly, we have got to fight. We are going to not be anything at all. I've seen the country really going backwards over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, and unless we are prepared to fight for our economy, we are going to be at the beck and call of China or Russia or somebody's. God bless you. It's terrible.
Do you think your party's naive about Chinese intentions?
Absolutely. I mean, look, as you pointed out, we know the intelligence situation with China. We know that there is a strategic competition there. We're not naive about that. We're just living in the world as it is. And we have to deal with that. A country that, as you've said, we trade with a lot. Now, there are goods that come to this nation. There are cheaper goods for our consumers, cheaper televisions for the people who get to watch them. We get to benefit from that, and we get to sell other goods around the world. We get to design products here, and they're made abroad, I agree. But that is part of this, and this is the world that we live in. I could deal with the world as it is or the world as I wish it would be. But you start with the world as it is, and you try to get it to a place you wish it was.
Well, I'm not sure Xi Jinping is the right partner to help us with that, but the jury's out. Well, coming up, the government says that pupils should not be automatically sent home if they're suspended from school. Are they right? Stick with us on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Was William Shakespeare a black Jewish woman? Well, that's what a sensational, to say the least, new book is claiming. Author Irene Coslet argues that centuries of Western-centric ideology has hidden the true authorship of the Shakespearean canon and points to Emilio Bassano, a poet with Tudor court connections, as the real writer behind the plays. According to the theory, a woman of North African origin used the pen name Shakespeare only for her work to be stolen by an uneducated man from Stratford-upon-Avon. So tonight, I'm asking, is British history being rewritten or even erased in the name of modern identity politics? I'm now delighted to be joined for the first time on the show, founder of the YouTube channel History Revealed, Joel. Thanks for joining me, Joel. And activist Iman Aitin. Thank you very much for joining me, both of you. Iman, I'll start with you and then I'll let Joel respond directly to your statement. Do you think British history is being erased?
Well, no, but let me just be clear. I think we've been manipulated by a very hot article from Telegraph. It basically led us all to believe that this woman, who was technically supposed to be erasing Shakespeare because she was the original, and now our history as English British people is being erased. Well, that title was actually wrong, because Emilia wasn't actually black, nor was she African, nor was she North African. So I'll stop taking the mick and I'll just explain that she had a white mother who was English.
Yeah.
She had a father who was Italian. No. If we're going to talk about it, let me be clear. Let's be clear. Her father was Italian, Spanish. There was no actual link in terms of her actually being North African.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Kate, and keeping me company until 7 o'clock, I've got Kelvin Mackenzie and Jeevan Sander. Now, next story of the hour, should pupils who've been suspended from school automatically be sent home? Well, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has said that being sent home means that pupils risk retreating to social media and has suggested that on-site suspensions should be used for pupils who have not been violent. So let's ask the panel, is this the best way to discipline misbehaving pupils? Well, Kelvin, I used to be a school teacher for quite some time, and I have to say that...
So you were a school teacher and a Conservative. That must have made you almost unique in any common room.
I wasn't actually a member or even political at the time I was a teacher, although I was a teacher at the time when Michael Gove brought in some of his biggest education reforms, and I did approve of them, and I was alone in the staff room, it's true. But, you know, we believe in diversity of thought in this country. But when I was a teacher, behaviour was already worse than when I was at school. But now, in the 10 years since then, it has really, particularly since COVID, has become very, very challenging. Some teachers say they spend 30–40% of the school day dealing with behaviour. Do you think suspensions are the answer to that?
Well, the best person to be on here would be a couple of teachers to tell their horrific stories. In my family, my wider family, I have a dot of a relative who came in via that scheme where you've been a later graduate in life. She said it was nightmarish. She said, you know, where she was at school, there would be like 15-year-old boys who are big lads, and they would literally tell you to F off.
Yeah.
And they would literally say, I'm not doing that. And they just walk out, and they do this and they do that. And then then she would go to the head teacher and say, I've got to suspend this guy. And he would say, can you not do that? Isn't there a workaround? Can I get him to apologise to you? I would say for some teachers, it would be a nightmare. Now, she makes a good point, Phillipson, which is probably pretty rare, actually. But she makes a reasonable point that people being sent home are likely to be actually even more loutish and more stupid than they are when they're in the school. But the issue, what I would like to know is, what do the teachers actually think? Not what the politicians think, not what sounds like a good idea. Why do they genuinely believe that having a special kind of lead-encased classroom over there where there is a collection of vile, thick kids who want to cause trouble is a good idea? Well, what will it create within the school?
Well, these rooms already exist, these isolation rooms. That's usually the first level of discipline, is they get put in isolation. But then there is this escalation, which is they get sent home. But I think Phillipson's right that the problem is home is too attractive. But also, in the past, if you got sent home from school, you'd be in serious trouble from your parents as well as the school. Whereas now we're seeing an increase in the parents actually challenging the school rather than backing up the discipline.
It's change has gotten a lot more difficult. Look, in terms of the issue, I think we're kind of agreed, right? It's what works, and this looks like it could work, so it's good news, and I'm really glad we're doing it. But I completely take the points you're both raising, which is the huge decline in standards and behaviour, the huge increase in these, and the thing that young people went through. I think during the pandemic, there was a lot that young people went through, and we're still dealing with a lot of those after effects. So how do we appropriately discipline kids? And look, we all had kids in school who were naughty, absolutely. We remember them. Some of us may have been them. But how do we ensure those children are still learning in the best way possible? I think this is a good route forward, but I think you're right. Teachers are finding it much more difficult now. They have a lot more to deal with.
Right, but you raised a good point there, which is that the parents are almost as bad, if not worse, than the kids. I know that what used to happen was you had to tell the parents that the child was going to go into detention after school. So you tell them by email. They then write back to you and say, well, don't do that because we're going out to the movies or we're going to McDonald's or something.
How dare you discipline my child? Yeah.
Well,
You've
possibly
got the
that,
wrong kid.
but what about this? Why not put that child in detention in the lunch hour, and that way everybody's life goes on? And you write back and you say, no, honestly, what he did, and it was almost always a he, was so disgusting, they have to do this, that and the other, and the battle would start. And it would still be going on with the teachers at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And that's why some of the teachers then say, actually, I don't want to do this. I'm not being paid to carry on working at this time of night. No, there is something wrong with some parents today. I feel very sorry for what some of the teachers have to put up with.
I think there are two things that have changed. One that should be easy to fix and one that's much more difficult. Firstly is social media, and lots of teachers say that so many of the discipline problems that manifest in schools start online. The government could get phones out of schools tomorrow. In fact, they have produced some guidance, but that's a possibility. But something that's much harder is actually rising levels of fatherlessness. And half of teenagers now, by the time we get to 16, don't live with both parents. And we know that kids, particularly with dads at home, do have better behaviour. But that's something that Labour Party is not really interested in tackling.
Well, it's also about the strain that young parents go through, which I think is very difficult. We're living in an age where, for example, child poverty is rising, but that means, of course, the parents are also in poverty. And when you can't pay the bill, it's a lot more difficult to live life.
Here.
No, but
I'm
taking this right on, right? What I'm saying to you is that the huge stresses that come onto parents, you've talked about family breakdown, and I'm saying there's also an economic cause of this as well.
But, no, I do want to take you up on this because relative poverty is a mathematical certainty, OK? Because relative poverty is just if you live in a household that has an income of 60% below the median. If the average income was £1 million a year, you'd still have a proportion of people in relative poverty. So, I mean, as a measurement, that is junk. And the reason that it looks like child poverty has increased is because pensioner poverty has decreased because of the triple lock. So, there are always people in poverty. That is true. But I don't think that is a cause of this massive increase in behaviour.
But the reason why it's benchmarked in that particular way is because also average wages also determine what it costs to live a decent life, right? So partly what the average wage is doing indicates, but mathematically you could ensure that everybody gets above that 60% line.
How? Only if everybody earns the same in a communist dictatorship.
No, it wouldn't be that. No, it'd be everyone getting enough money to be above the 60% line.
Yes, but they're always
which is a
going to
different
be.
Line.
How would you do that?
Well, the whole point in which we have
it's like when people say everybody should go to an above average.
No, hold on a second. It's not about that because they have to be 60% of the average, not above the average, right? So absolutely, you could live in a world with zero poverty.
No, you could live in a world with zero absolute poverty, but you can never live in a world with zero relative poverty.
Of course you can, Miriam.
How?
You would have a floor in income. Like, if you get to 60% of the average income, which at the moment I'm guessing is probably, 35k is the average wage. So you probably go over 20k per person, probably 40k for a household. If everyone got above that line, yes, child poverty will fall to zero.
Because the measurement is relative poverty.
Relative to the average.
Yes. So if there's an average, right, you have a standard deviation above the average and a standard deviation below the average. To have an average, you have got to have people at 60% less than the average. It's just maths.
If you have an average and the line is at 60% of the average, you could have everyone above the line. It would mean a smaller compression.
Because you're looking at... I think we're getting a little bit too technical. That's mathematically wrong.
No, that is the maths, Miriam. That is the maths.
Can I say, with benefits, I'm astonished that anybody's skinned at all. I saw a number the other day that you have to be earning $71,000 a year to be at least as well off as a family with one of the adults who's on PIP and 3 kids. You get 44 grand. OK, so 71,000 before tax translates into the 44,000. So why is anybody? No wonder unemployment going up.
I take full responsibility for taking us off the topic. We're going to come back to benefits in the next section. Right. Let's get back to children's behaviour because I think Bridget Phillipson's in a very difficult position. This is not something that schools can actually sort out on their own. What can be done to get parents to take more responsibility for their children's behaviour?
I think. I mean, one of the things you've got to congratulate the migrant community about is that they understand that there's only one thing that matters in this world, which is education. That will drag you. That will give you a sporting chance, and so they focus. If you go to a university, go to when the degrees are handed out. Honestly, the whooping and the hollering from migrant families who have seen their kids do well. I don't think that the white parent community have the same feeling towards schooling as the migrant community do. In fact, I know that's true because the numbers prove that. So unless we start encouraging the majority white, the people almost certainly watching this show tonight, to actually drive their children on, right, and to support the teachers and support their school, we are going to continue to fail.
Well, do let us know what you think at home, gbnews.com/your say. Well, coming up, WASPI women have been told that they won't get compensation over the changing of their state pension age for the second time. Is this another Labour U-turn? Stick with us.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Sunny spells on Friday for Ibiza and Mallorca. A few showers in southern parts of Italy. For northern Spain and northern Portugal, more wet and windy weather swinging in here, also bringing some heavy downpours through into western parts of France. The south of France, Catalonia, seeing sunny spells on Friday, but it will turn wetter here. Showers in southern Italy and a mixture of sunny spells and showers for the Greek islands as well. That wet weather working its way across northern Spain into Barcelona for Sunday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Yet more unsettled weather to come. Lots of rain around during the next 24 hours. Snow for some northern areas, all of it accompanied by gusty winds. Low pressure well and truly in charge of the UK's weather at the moment. A south-shifted storm track means these lows are moving in from the southwest, relentlessly bringing more bands of rain in to much of south and southwestern UK. And those bands of rain moving northeastwards, bumping into colder air in the northeast. So could be issues at first overnight across Northern Ireland, the southwest, following yet more wet weather. But then, by the end of the night, there'll be some snow falling across parts of northern England, southern Scotland, most likely above 100, 200 metres, and not really settling until you get to 300 metres. But there'll be some wintry weather around first thing. The Grampians continuing to see persistent rain and hill snow, likewise accompanied by strong southeasterly winds. Northwest Scotland, once again the place to be, plenty of sunshine to start things off here. The more persistent rain clearing Northern Ireland, clearing the Midlands, and showers following. Brighter skies at first for the southwest, albeit with some showers, before the next system piles in by the afternoon, bringing once again persistent and at times heavy rain as well as gusty winds. None of these systems amounting to as much rain as we saw earlier in the week due to Storm Chandra, but not welcome anyway because of the saturated nature of the ground. And the rain in the northeast tending to persist, although the snow mostly confined to the tops of the Pennines and southern uplands by the afternoon. Saturday isn't looking quite as wet and windy. We do still have lots of showers rotating around a decaying area of low pressure in the south. They ease later in the day. Plenty of cloud cover. The driest weather towards the northwest and even some sunshine coming through. Feeling cold nevertheless. Sunday still a lot of cloud around before it turns unsettled again later Monday.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Miriam Cates, keeping me company until 7 o'clock. I've got the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, and the Labour MP, Jeevan Sander. And you've been getting in touch with some of your views. Lots of views on Keir Starmer's visit to China. Michelle says, intelligence sharing with China, whatever next. I take it that's not Michelle Dewberry, although maybe she's watching and commenting. Peter says, Britain can't trust Starmer, never mind China. Merrill says, Starmer gave money to the French to help stop the boats, so do the Conservatives, and China are doing it for free. Oh, well, maybe we're onto something. Do keep getting your views in at gbnews.com/your say. Moving on now, the Work and Pensions Secretary, Pat McFadden, has announced that WASPI women will not receive compensation.
It would not be practical to set up a compensation scheme to assess conclusively the answers to these questions. As for a flat rate scheme, that would cost up to £10.3 billion and would simply not be right or fair, given it would be paid to the vast majority who were aware of the changes. In taking this new decision, the Government has come to the same conclusion on compensation as my right honourable friend, the previous Secretary of State, announced in December 2024.
But we're asking, is this yet another Labour backtrack? This was Rachel Reeves 6 years ago, standing with the WASPI women in their campaign. And even Sir Keir Starmer, now the Prime Minister, called the situation of the WASPI women a sad debacle and a disgrace. That was back in 2019 when he met the chair of the organisation, Angela Madden. And just 4 years ago, he signed a pledge calling for the women affected to receive fair and fast compensation. And Martin Daubney, GB News presenter, spoke to WASPI woman Angela Madden earlier.
We do. We feel used and abused by it. We are voters, and we are the generation that vote. And yes, we've been taken advantage of, definitely, because it seems as though this government have never had any intention of paying compensation. They've been saying the same thing as the Department of Work and Pensions, who already told the Ombudsman that they weren't going to take any notice of any Ombudsman's report or anything that proved them guilty. So it doesn't really matter what evidence we come up with. The government is intent on making sure we don't get compensated for the harm we've encountered.
Kelvin, let's start with you. I mean, I think this decision is inevitable, but would you call it a U-turn?
Well, look, honestly, the way Labour work, they start off with the U-turn and work backwards, and then decide that the U-turn was the right idea in the first place. So if they have a U-turn, it's honestly, it's almost not a story anymore. I mean, it's an astonishing moment. But the truth about the matter is that we haven't got 10 billion, we haven't got 10 quid, we haven't got 10 pence. Right, we're skinned, and we're so skinned. And Starmer is so worried about his state of whether he's going to survive or not, that they're not going to cut welfare for fear that, in fact, Labour the Labour MPs decide that they'd rather get rid of Starmer than get rid of the welfare. So our country economically is done for at the moment, and likely to be for the duration of this Parliament. It's a very sad moment for us. In relation to this, the WASPI women, look, I'm afraid they're going to have to suck it up. We only have one penny, and that penny appeared to have gone to the family connected with the blood scandal, right? And the WASPI women, I'm afraid, are looking at them. Unfortunately, they're not going to be around for very long either.
Jeevan, do you think this is the right decision? And do you also think that some Labour MPs or candidates misled WASPI women into thinking that Labour was going to do something about this?
Well, I have a huge amount of sympathy for the WASPI women. I understand their anguish. Look, I stood in a manifesto that did not promise compensation to the WASPI women, and in part because what happened during the last Conservative government, George Osborne, he promised to raise the state pension age, and 90% of that cohort knew the state pension age was rising. Yeah. Look, you guys won in 15, you won in 17, you won in 19. There was a democratic decision to raise the state pension age. So now the question is not just about compensation, but who do you pay it to? And what this 10 billion would involve is paying every single person who's in that cohort, 90% of whom knew the change was coming, they would all get the money. And like Kelvin says, it's £10 billion. Now, £10 billion of which, 9 billion is not going to the right place, to the right people. Yeah. is unfortunately not the way we can use taxpayers' money, especially at this moment in time. I know that we have disagreements on this panel. I think one thing we would agree on is we have to rearm to defend ourselves, defend this country against Russia and a possible European invasion. Now, that £10 billion, I think, would be better used to that than to the 90% of whom it would go to who did know the changes were coming in.
I think a lot of people would agree, but they would also agree that 10 billion is nowhere near enough, and actually we're going to have to cut our welfare bill by considerably more than that if we do want to.
But that is never going to happen. It is never going to happen. I've never seen anything so nakedly sort of political. Honestly, it's absolute laugh watching.
Well, we do know
Starmer
it's not going to happen.
Trying to hang on to his power. So he now says we can't deal with the welfare. Which have you seen the number?
Yeah.
That number, the welfare number, is now 350 odd billion. And you would have thought, yes, somebody is going to have some pain if we're going to survive as a nation. And he has said, I tell you what, mate, we're not doing any of that. You can be as rich as you like. I am staying in number 10, and I wouldn't stay in number 10 if I tried to push welfare cuts through Parliament.
Well, we do know now that there won't be any welfare reform at least the next year, because the DWP has been told that they won't have any space in the King's speech. There won't be any welfare bills coming on stream. I mean, how can we go on like this as an economy?
Well, I think the way in which you ensure your social security expenditure come down is get people into work and create good jobs as well. So I take the point about it, but it takes investment, right? So I'd say, look, the last Conservative government, I think the mistake they made was they said, we're going to punish people, we're going to punish people, we're going to punish people, we'll sanction them. And what have people moved from universal credit and both the issues of not having enough money, as well as the stress of it, push them into sickness and incapacity social security payments. By the way, it's not easy to get on those payments at all. It's very difficult. But people have moved away from the labour market.
The people in the
on the other side of it as well, part of it's about creating good jobs, and I agree with that. And by the way, the Warm Homes Plan, over 200,000 good jobs, a lot of them non-graduate jobs across the country. But yes, the training, and on top of that as well, a way in which we work constructively with those people who may fall into or out of work. The other side of social security, I want to make clear, most of that does go to pension and pensioners.
Half.
Well,
about half of that.
I think just over half, right? But on the other side of it, that's a huge amount of expenditure. The right thing to do is support pensions, I take the point. But on the other side as well, you think about all those people in universal credit, for example, who are in work, but those universal credit payments are topping up low payments, low pay to help them. Now, I think that is also the right thing to do as well.
I've heard
and those who are supported as well. That's the right thing to do.
But the truth about the matter is, most of those people, when they say we're in work, they never actually define what work is, i.e. how many hours. They're not working 40 hours. You can be in work and you are on 16 hours and you're also claiming the benefit. So why don't you get more people not doing this 16-hour trick, which actually is leading to our country? Actually, you then talk about finding good jobs. Under Labour, all that's happened is that unemployment has gone through the roof. We're now at 5.1. There's no sign of more jobs being created. We have AI coming down the track. If any of us have young relatives at all, we can all see them all finding it quite tough to find, I agree with you, decent, well-paid jobs. Where are they? They're not there, and they won't be there under Labour.
Employment is higher than at the election. Employment has risen. The numbers in employment have risen.
Unemployment has gone up.
The numbers unemployed has risen slightly because those people have left inactivity and now seeking work.
Very simple
but there are a lot more good jobs you have to create,
create,
and there is a good story.
But there is something very simple you could do to bring down the benefits bill very quickly. We are the only country in the West that treats physical and mental health the same in terms of benefits. Other European countries haven't struggled with getting people back to work over COVID. Why not just stop giving out benefits for minor mental health complaints?
Because those people...
That would save huge amount of money. And it would only be going back 3 or 4 years. It's not like we're going back to the dark ages.
But first of all, when I've seen those people who have claimants, for example, mild mental health claimants do not get on. They tend to have a comorbidity, i.e. you have both depression or anxiety, but also another issue as well, the health condition. And I've had people come to my surgery who have applied for PIP and applied to ESA, and I see those forms. And it's not a simple or easy thing to do. Like, these people are genuinely sick. I take them at their word, and I've seen it as well. The question for me is, how do you treat them well? That's the NHS story. How do you get them into good jobs? That's absolutely like creating good jobs. And on the other side, especially those, of course, who cannot work, we said some will not, you have income there so they can also live a decent life.
But the truth about the matter, you're nearly 2 years into this now, right? And you're talking about it as though you are sitting outside the problem. You are right in the heart of the problem. And I'm not, I do blame Labour for a lot of it, but actually there is a lot of problems for our country right now.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there on that one. Coming up, assisted dying campaigners are threatening to force the bill through Parliament after opposition and delays from the House of Lords. But are they right to have concerns? Stick with. Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. With me, Miriam Cates, keeping me company until 7 o'clock. I've still got Kelvin McKenzie and Jeevan stand up with me in the studio. Now, could the assisted suicide bill be forced through the House of Lords, bypassing the various different concerns? Well, backers of the legislation are considering using a rarely used parliamentary mechanism to override objection from peers after accusing opponents in the Lords of deliberately dragging out the process. More than 1,000 amendments have been tabled, which is a record for a private member's bill. So, could this controversial legislation be passed sooner than expected? Jeevan, there are some serious concerns about the safety of this bill, which is reflected in the Lords' amendments. But one of the sponsors of the bill, Lord Faulkner, one of the Labour peers, is threatening to use the Parliament Act, which is usually only used for issues that are in the manifesto, so people have voted for.
But you say it's objections to the bill. The Lords haven't voted on these clauses or these amendments. And Charlie's point would be that actually, let's get to a vote. Now, of those 1,000 amendments, about 7 Lords have tabled over half those amendments. And some of those amendments say things like, for example, for someone who is terminally ill, who would like to have the choice to shorten their suffering, shorten their death, they'd have to have a pregnancy test, irrespective of being a man or being a woman. That does not seem to me like an amendment that's strengthening the bill. But I say this as well, and I have a huge amount of respect for the Lords, right? Modern. There's a huge amount of expertise, they deliberate, they absolutely consider things really carefully. I would say take it to a vote. Vote on the amendments, vote on what's before you and send a bill back to the Commons. That would be my view.
But the problem, Kelvin, is that when this was in committee stage in the Commons, the committee rejected an awful lot of sensible amendments that would have made the bill a lot safer. And so now the Lords are understandably concerned about the consequences.
Well, I've often wondered whether the Lords are more concerned because they're closer towards having the issue. Anyway, putting that to one side, Look, we have a system. The Lords have been trying to wreck various bills for as long as I've been alive. I'm sure in the end of the day that this will go through. This appears to be the will of the people, and I just think we just got to suck it up and get on with it, and this too will pass.
It does concern me, Jeevan, and it's not just about this particular vote, but we have a problem in this country with some of these, I don't know, you might call them moral laws or conscience laws being pushed through by private members' bills, and the public never, ever get the chance to vote for them.
Well, the public support this, I think, 8-1.
They don't.
You think
when
about the manifesto...
when they get told what it actually involves, support radically drops from 73% to 43%.
So, first of all, I don't accept those numbers, but more broadly as well, you know as well as I do that you can't have this in a manifesto for the very reason, as you said, it's a conscience issue that would split parties.
Well, should we stop that? Should we end that? Should we make politicians actually take a stand on these issues?
Politicians
Why
do
do you
take
get to keep it secret? No,
well,
why do you get to keep it
right?
secret until
But
the vote?
here we are, and every single politician who's voted on this has made a decision that they will, of course, be accountable to their constituents, right? And every single person I knew in Parliament, personally, spent a long time thoughtfully considering these issues. And I say that on both sides, by the way. People who oppose this bill oppose it for really principled reasons. And I completely understand and respect that, right? But the public do support this bill. It went through committee, it went through the Commons, it's gone to the Lords. And I would say the Lords should vote on those amendments and send the bill back. That seems to be quite a common sense position.
And then if it doesn't, it should fall because it wasn't in the manifesto. Well, we'll see. Anyway, I'm afraid we've run out of time, but thank you both for a lively show. Really appreciate your company. Thank you, everybody at home as well for watching. And up next, we've got Farage with Martin Daubney. I'll be back in the morning, 9:30 for Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters. Have a great evening.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. More unsettled weather to come. Lots of rain around during the next 24 hours. Snow for some northern areas, all of it accompanied by gusty winds. Low pressure well and truly in charge of the UK's weather at the moment. A south-shifted storm track means these lows are moving in from the southwest, relentlessly bringing more bands of rain in to much of south and southwestern UK. And those bands of rain moving northeastwards, bumping into colder air in the northeast. So could be issues at first overnight across Northern Ireland, the southwest, following yet more wet weather. But then, by the end of the night, there'll be some snow falling across parts of northern England, southern Scotland, most likely above 100, 200 metres, and not really settling until you get to 300 metres. But there'll be some wintry weather around first thing. The Grampians continuing to see persistent rain and hill snow, likewise accompanied by strong southeasterly winds. Northwest Scotland, once again the place to be, plenty of sunshine to start things off here. The more persistent rain clearing Northern Ireland, clearing the Midlands, and showers following. Brighter skies at first for the southwest, albeit with some showers, before the next system piles in by the afternoon, bringing once again persistent and at times heavy rain as well as gusty winds. None of these systems amounting to as much rain as we saw earlier in the week due to Storm Chandra, but not welcome anyway because of the saturated nature of the ground. And the rain in the northeast tending to persist, although the snow mostly confined to the tops of the Pennines and southern uplands by the afternoon. Saturday isn't looking quite as wet and windy. We do still have lots of showers rotating around a decaying area of low pressure in the south. They ease later in the day. Plenty of cloud cover. The driest weather towards the northwest and even some sunshine coming through. Feeling cold nevertheless. Sunday still a lot of cloud around before it turns unsettled again later Monday.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption.